Real Estate Lab. This topic, guys, I want to go over building your team. Building your team is very important. There are a lot of different aspects to it. There's a lot of different roles that can be played in this business. Some of it are, some of the roles are in-house. Some of them are what I'm going to call third party, which means you're hiring out. Some of it can be, even the in-house could be considered, an employee you can hire or a partner. I'm going to talk a lot about partnering. And I created a nifty little table here for you guys that should cover, maybe it doesn't cover everything, but it covers most of the roles that you're going to encounter, most of the major roles. And there's quite a few of them. So I'm just going to walk through this. But first, I want to explain a little bit on the in-house roles that we're going to see, from finding deals, raising capital, asset management, right? These are not roles that everyone's going to need. For example, if you're buying properties on your own, you're not going to need... ideally, you're not going to need somebody to help raise capital, or maybe a loan guarantor that's going to be yourself. So, where this really comes into play, building your team, is you're trying to build a company out of this. You're growing. Maybe you're starting from scratch like I did. You don't have a ton of capital in the beginning. You don't have a lot of net worth or liquidity in the beginning. And so you're going to be raising capital. There's scenarios where you're going to be partnering up with people, having multiple people on your team. When I say in-house and on your team partnering, right, a lot of times you can bring people in, share the equity in a project for these roles, and we'll talk more about this later, and this will make a little bit more sense once we get into the syndication side of the business, raising capital. That's where I see a lot of people building teams, having business partners for different roles, people who bring different things to the table. So let's dive into this, right? So in-house, let's start with in-house, finding deals. That's the first thing. So somebody on your team that can find deals, bring in this deal flow, which is what we call it, finding deals. And this is, I would say, this is the most important part early on in business, is deal flow. You have no business without buying a property, right? Without buying deals, especially you're syndicating, right? Your time in this business starts and revenue starts when you buy a property. So finding deals, in my opinion, is always the most important thing, right? In order to find deals and make offers, you need to be able to underwrite. There needs to be somebody on your team to make offers, and the communication, I spelled that wrong. Let's change that up. Communication, very important. I normally suggest the person that is dealing with the selling broker, right? You're going out there and you're looking to find a deal. You might be going through a broker or an agent or direct to seller. I suggest that if you have a team and if you have multiple people on your team, the person that is making the offers is also going through and being that point of communication through to the end with the seller or the broker. And the reason why I say it should be the same person, ideally, that takes the lead on that is because you're going to be developing rapport, a relationship with these people, brokers or sellers, and it makes the most sense if one person can go through and build rapport. You can control the negotiation, you can control the situation. So I suggest that's the same person. Does not have to be the same person that manages the transaction, though. A lot of people, when they grow big enough companies, they hire out transaction management. As you guys will see when you buy your first property, the transaction itself is a long and lengthy process, and there's a lot of steps to it. From finding the deal, underwriting it, and then you get it under contract, managing the attorneys and legal, managing the title process, managing getting insurance quotes, third-party reports, financing with the bank. There's just a ton of different steps to the transaction process, and it's normally one of the roles that I take on myself. I like controlling that process from start to finish, from making the offer, managing the transaction, organizing everything. I like to stay very organized, seeing it through to the end, to the closing table. That's a process that I really like controlling because it is a little bit of an art, and it takes a lot of work to be able to manage it, stay organized, and stay on track and close the property on time. So you're not running into any timing issues. Raising capital, obviously it's another role that can be played by yourself or a partner. managing the financing process, working with the banks. There's a lot that goes into working with the bank. Lots of documents flow back and forth. The bank's going to request dozens of documents from you, lots of different things from personal financial statements to property-related documents and reports and finances and financing. So a lot of things that go into the financing process. Loan guarantor. Let's say you're just starting out, you don't have any money yourself, you don't have any net worth or liquidity. Somebody needs to sign on the loan to help you qualify for it, right? When you're buying a property. And we buy pretty much all our properties with loans. I haven't really bought any properties with cash. Financing is cheap. It makes sense. It's smart. As long as you're putting on good debt, which we'll talk about later, and not bad debt. Not nothing too expensive. Right now, rates are really low. Financing is awesome, and you need to take advantage of it. But you need somebody to qualify for it. And if you're just starting out, like, when I did, I had no net worth or liquidity. I couldn't qualify for the loan, so I had to bring on a partner to do that. And then lastly, asset management. So once you buy a property, you're going to be managing. If you're not property managing, you're not actually doing the leasing and the maintenance and this and that. Maybe you hire that out to a property manager, which I have down here. You might be asset managing, which is pretty much babysitting the property management company, right? It's a big role. It takes a lot of time as well, and it's super important. So these can be in-house. This one can, I guess, be third party. If you just bring out a partner that's maybe not a full-time partner with your company. And same with raising capital, right? That could be somebody that's maybe not a full-time partner with your company, but you partner on a specific deal and they're going to help you raise capital. Or a money partner. So I guess I could put in raising capital or money partner, somebody that's going to put the money up themselves and partner with you on the deal. So that could be in-house / third party. Okay. So next, a third party, the people that are not on your internal team, that are not partners on the property, that are not going to be owners or co-owners with you, or do not own a piece of your real estate company, we're going to start that off with multifamily brokers. So you need to develop relationships with brokers. These are sales guys or salesmen or women for multifamily properties. They are hunting day in and day out, building relationships with sellers and owners of properties. And when it comes time for them to sell, just like a single-family residential real estate agent, these guys or girls do the exact same thing. Multifamily brokers. Develop a lot of relationships with brokers in your market, and they will bring you deals. We'll talk about that a little bit more in depth later on. Real estate attorney, you're going to need an attorney. I do not go under contract on any property ever without using a real estate attorney. My attorney helps negotiate and get us a purchase agreement that is acceptable to us and makes sure that we are protected and safe. Real estate attorney is key. Do not cheap out on a real estate attorney. Oftentimes, they are $250, $300, $400 an hour. I have one attorney that's $500 plus an hour, very expensive. I spend normally between $5,000 to $15,000 on every property I buy on legal fees. I pay the bill every time. I don't question it because they are there to protect us, and don't cheap out on legal. That is one of my biggest rules. Hire a good attorney, not a cheap attorney. Property management company, obviously extremely important in this industry. Whether maybe you manage in-house. I guess this could be third party / in-house if you do it in-house. I do not suggest it when you're starting out, as long as there are options out there for property management. Some locations, there are literally no options. And other locations, there are no good options because the companies that are there suck. And that's just a fact of the business. There are sometimes places where there are no good property management companies, but there are other places where there are lots of good management companies. So I would say a management company or management companies are great for you to interview and know kind of early on in the business in the markets that you guys are deciding to invest in, which we're going to talk about in the next chapter is the markets that you want to invest in and picking that market. Once you pick a market, obviously, these are the contacts that you're going to be reaching out to. Brokers in your area, management companies in your area, a real estate attorney. It doesn't have to be right near you, but honestly, it's good to have one that's in state because they know your state laws. Sometimes attorneys can't practice across state lines, so depending on where they're licensed, most of the time you're going to just want one in the state that you're located in. Title company, local is obviously best. They understand state laws. Banks and mortgage brokers. Back on title company really quick, a lot of times the attorneys locally will know the title company and they'll suggest one for you to use. Banks or mortgage brokers, you could go directly to a bank for a loan. Say you know a local bank or local credit union. I don't suggest using the big banks like the Bank of America, the Chase, those ones. They don't have, at least as of the time of recording this video, they don't always have the best options for financing. Really what I suggest in the beginning, because you don't know all your options, is talk to a mortgage broker. Because mortgage brokers, and if you find a local one that's in your region, your area, your city, mortgage brokers will know not only the local banks, the local credit unions, they will have insurance company lenders, they will have agency lenders, Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, the big stabilized loan providers. They will know the bridge lenders, construction lenders. Mortgage brokers are your best bet, and you're going to pay them normally 1% of the loan amount, 1% of the loan amount fee for their service. But it's well worth it because you go to one bank and you're not going to really get a clear, especially if it's a local bank, you're not getting a very clear picture of what type of financing is out there because every bank, especially the smaller ones, have different terms, different loan to values, different interest rates, different length of loan term. And we'll go over all this stuff, the terms of loans in depth later on. But you know, unless you go out yourself and you're quoting 4, 5, 6 different banks, you really don't know what the best options are going to be. So going with a mortgage broker that can educate you on that process is really important. I'll just name off a couple companies right now. You could go to Berkadia. I have a guy I work with a lot at Berkadia, CBRE, Marcus and Millichap, etc. There's a lot of these the same companies that are multifamily brokers that sell. I'll put in here sales brokers, or I'll put it here at the end. Multifamily brokers on the sales side, right? Because there are mortgage brokers. A broker is basically somebody who will figure out what you need and will go out and source, from a multitude of providers. They'll go and put it in front of them and bring you back an option. So when it comes to mortgages, you give a deal to a mortgage broker, they're going to go out and put it in front of 10 or 20 banks or more, and they're going to bring you back the best couple term sheets from banks that really want the deal that you're looking at, right? Because every bank wants different types of properties too. Same multifamily broker. You're going to tell them what type of properties you're looking for, and then they'll put you on a list, or they're going to start putting deals in front of you that meet your criteria. So that's mortgage brokers. Third-party reports, very important once you get under contract on a property. You're going to be needing surveys, environmental reports, property condition reports, PCRs, all different. No, you're normally not going to order an appraisal. That's normally going to be the bank that's going to order the appraisal. However, you are going to need various other third-party reports. These 3 reports that are right here, in addition to a zoning report. These are reports that I order on every single deal. I normally spend $8,000 to $12,000 to order all of these reports, but it's worth it. It makes sure you're protected environmentally. You have a new survey that's updated, which is going to be satisfactory to title. You get a property condition report, which is going to be an inspection, professional inspection of the property. And a lot of times banks will require that. And then a zoning report is going to show that, hey, you're current, that you're conforming on your zoning. And it's just going to give a lot of details about the property itself. Insurance providers, you can go directly to insurance providers if you want. I suggest, I'm going to put more brokers here as well. There are insurance brokers who will go and shop the deal to a bunch of different providers and bring you the best quote. So I suggest you go with the broker. General contractors, right? Renovations, something else you're going to need on your team. This could be in-house if you have a construction company yourself, a renovation company or team. But I outsource it. I don't normally manage that myself. So have a general contractor or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, because a lot of times it's hard to find a good one. And they're busy at different times, especially if you find smaller companies, they have things going on. They might be really busy. They try to add your project on. They don't really give it a lot of attention. So it's always important to find the right fit for your project and general contractor. So now that you guys have seen this document, which is going to be available in the tools section, document section for you guys, what's important to note in this process, especially in the in-house side of things, right? Because the in-house side, this is the ownership normally. This is the ownership team. You may have employees that help you with this, right? You may hire an acquisitions person that can underwrite and find deals. You could hire an asset manager or a transaction manager, right, who helps out with the process. Sometimes in the beginning, that's somebody that does both of those things. But oftentimes in the beginning, this is just you, right? You're doing all this. You don't have the capital to hire somebody, or it doesn't make sense because you have the time to do it yourself. Why would you hire somebody, right? The goal is the more of these things that you can do, and let's talk about syndication a little bit, right? Syndication or buying a property with partners. The more of these things you can do, the more ownership you're going to get in a property. So let's run by a scenario here. Let's say you find a 20-unit apartment building and you want to buy it. You don't have the money to buy it yourself, right? If you were going to buy it yourself and you can guarantee the loan, you could pretty much do all these things on your own, and you're going to buy that property and you're going to own 100% of that property yourself. You're going to buy it and you're going to be the sole owner of that property. Scenario 2, let's say you have half the money and you have somebody else that could bring half the money. Well, maybe you go 50-50 and buy the deal. Maybe there's a scenario, though, where you're doing a lot of this work and your other partner is just a money partner. They're going to bring in 50% of the money to buy the property, but you're doing all the work. Well, maybe it's not fair to go 50-50 then. Maybe you should have 60% ownership and they should have 40% ownership, right? They're putting up half the money, but you're doing all the work. Maybe it's 70-30 even. Another scenario, let's say you're raising capital. You're not putting up any money, but you're raising capital. All the money that's needed to buy the property is going to come from another individual or an array of multiple individuals that are putting all the money up. Well, you're going to be doing all this work to buy the property, right? You're going to be managing the financing process, the transaction management, making offers, underwriting deals, finding deals. I'm going to go over this very in depth on a structuring your deal section. But what I really want to drill in is the more of these things that you can put together, and the more of these skill sets that you have and that you can do, the more of the property you're going to own in the end of the day. If you end up syndicating a property, and you'll, like I said, we'll talk about this more later, but let's say you give 80% of the ownership to all the investors that are putting the money up, and there's 20% set aside for the general partners or the person that's doing the work, the sponsor of the deal. That 20% is going to go to you if you can do all these things. Now, if you have to bring on a loan guarantor, you're probably going to split off some equity and give them a little piece of equity or a fee for finding the deal. If somebody brought you the deal, you might cut them in on a piece of it. You might partner with them. If somebody's underwriting the deal, managing the transaction process, or dealing with a broker, or raising capital, there are various skill sets that come into play here, and that can be you as a sole person doing all these things, or you can bring in a team and have multiple people with different skill sets bring these different things together. However, the more people that you outsource these skill sets to, the smaller and smaller your ownership is going to get when you're partnering with people. I've seen people go out and buy properties that are 100 units, 200 units, 50 units, even 30 units, and they bring in these teams of somebody found the deal, give them a piece of equity. Somebody underwrites the deal, give them a little piece. Somebody's managing the transaction and the due diligence, and I'm going to put in here, that's a good note to have, due diligence, physical inspections. Managing due diligence, and then there's somebody else that's raising money, and they're involved in managing the investors and additional other activities, managing the financing process, guaranteeing the loan, and now you've got 7 people involved, and so that 20% ownership for the sponsors, right, and the other 80 is maybe going to the investors, for example. That 20% gets chopped up 7 different ways. Well, you're only going to get 2.5% of this property. And that might be okay on a 300-unit property. You might be okay with that. But in the long run, it's not a lot for the time that you're putting in. And so what I suggest is that if you're getting started out, you have the time and the ability and the desire to want to master this business, master each and every one of these roles. I can do every one of these roles. For a while, I wasn't able to be the loan guarantor. That was the only thing that I needed. But the rest of these roles I had mastered. Now I can do all of these. Now I can guarantee loans up to $10 million. I could find the deal on my own, underwrite it, make the offer, transaction management, or my team, right, of asset managers now and underwriters. But I've mastered each one of these skill sets. And so when I go and put a property together, if I can raise all the money myself, I can guarantee the loan, I can manage the process, put the whole deal together, I really don't need to bring in any partners. And so I can own a bigger piece of the property. I can control the deal. I can control the decision making. The more partners you have, the more cooks in the kitchen, sometimes the more challenging things can get. And so nothing wrong with having partners. I think it's great. I'm not going to talk too much about having partners in this course, but what I will say is be careful on the partners you make, and don't bring anyone full-time on your company. Maybe you partner on a property, but which I would call dating, right? You're dating your partner. You're just buying a property together. But don't bring anyone in full-time on your company level entity without dating them first, or without selecting your partners wisely that have similar values to you and similar goals and intentions. But in the end, right, the more of these skills that you can master, and it's going to be harder in the beginning, right? I did all these things in the beginning, and it was tough because I didn't have somebody else that was experienced in it. I had to learn just by doing it and stumbling and failing and figuring it out. But in the end, that is what allows me to now have large amounts of equity in the properties that I own, because I can do each one of these roles. And then I have multiple contacts in multiple different cities, states, and different areas where I invest for each of these items, right? I have different attorneys. I have a couple different attorneys, brokers, management companies, title companies, general contractors, insurance providers, all that. So building your team, it's not going to happen overnight, but you can use this quick little sheet, and this could be per property. Maybe you have different roles. Maybe David does this and this, and this, and then we have Seth doing this, and then we have James doing this, and then we have Kimberly doing this. So it's all different roles. You could use this little sheet to assign it, or you could use this sheet just kind of as a little guide. This is building your team. These are the key roles that you're going to need, and the key third-party providers that you're going to be working with. If you guys have any questions, obviously drop it to our team, and start building this team immediately, as soon as possible. This should be a portion of what you're doing when you're first getting started out in your business, is start to network with these folks and then start building these skill sets.